Hi, welcome back to Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Once again, we're here this week talking about this past week's WWE Raw TLC predictions. We've got some hot news coming off at the end of the show with what's been going on backstage. It's been a crazy week in WWE. Once again, I'm joined by my regular co-host, none other than Mr. Josh Hayes. How are you today, Josh?
Well, I'm awake, so that's a start. I'm here to do this now. How are you?
Very well. We're 5 days away from TLC. I'm quite excited, really. It's going to be a busy 5 days, I think. We've got obviously NXT tonight, and we've got loads of stuff going on, so it's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah.
Definitely. So let's start with the top then. Let's start with Raw. Okay, so this Raw was obviously the first one coming from the new arena, the Tropicana Field in Tampa. It looks very similar to the Amway Center, although there was a brief mention at the start of the show. You wouldn't know. What do you make of the change of location before we get into Raw?
So, do you remember the Royal Rumble? It was either like this year, I think it was actually 2019 when it was in a baseball stadium out in Phoenix, and it looked amazing. Like wrestling events in baseball stadiums generally look fantastic. So I thought, I know the Thunderdome is it's like a mini arena that they build inside the arena. But I thought for sure they would change some of the aesthetics with Tropicana Field. It looks identical to the Thunderdome in Orlando, and I'm shocked that they didn't use that opportunity to give, like, if they're going to move around with a Thunderdome, they give each Thunderdome its own identity. Not at all.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I think the Thunderdome is its own unique identity base. It means that it can be anywhere. Doesn't matter location. I'm interested to see how long this kind of lasts. But as I said, it didn't really make any difference. So let's get into kind of how the show started. The show started with a dirt sheet. It was Miz and Morrison, and they were basically plugging this coming weekend's TLC. A couple of highlights. We had AJ Styles out there as well with Amos. The best thing of all was John Morrison. He was dressed like Braveheart in a tribute to Drew, which was hilarious. It was so much fun. What were your thoughts on kind of the opening?
I loved it. I loved it for a few reasons too. First of all, we've talked about, like, the very first time I was on your show, I mentioned that I only became a WWE fan after WCW went out of business. So my first Christmas time Raw was in 2001, and I'll never forget, it kicked off with The Rock reading his version of The Night Before Christmas. And I tend to, Christmas is my favorite holiday. I tend to like when wrestling incorporates it, even if it's kind of cheesy, and even if it's stuff to where it would be terrible if it was any other time of year. And so, yeah, I love a good take on The Night Before Christmas, and we got The Nightmare Before TLC. I thought The Miz was great. I mentioned to you, not the first time that we've seen John Morrison do a Braveheart impression of Drew McIntyre. He actually did that back in, I think it was 2009, 2010. So, yeah, he's reprising his role. We have AJ out there. I thought it was a great segment to establish the heels, and you see a little bit of the tension between The Miz and AJ Styles. Yeah, it was a very fun segment.
Yeah, it was. I think that it was crucially fun, quite comedic. I really enjoyed all the work. Interestingly, at the end of the segment, we had Sheamus come out. Sheamus obviously came out to set up this match with AJ Styles. So Sheamus versus AJ Styles of Us. This was a really, really good match. I think it was very close. There was a lot of like close calls and stuff like that. AJ got the big win, and then obviously after the match, we then basically got sort of AJ Styles get a cheap shot. We had Amos basically holding Sheamus, which was nice. It was great to see Amos get involved. They then did a spot where Sheamus ended up getting tied up, and it just had AJ Styles basically attacking Sheamus continually. What was your thoughts of the match and kind of the spot after?
I thought the match was pay-per-view quality. Yeah, I'm pretty sure with commercial breaks, it went almost 30 minutes.
It was a long
And
match.
they were booking Sheamus to look really strong, because Sheamus has kind of been, in this angle, he's portrayed as the champion's sidekick. But Sheamus showed how he can really stand on his own. Matter of fact, as a fan, when I was watching the match, there were a couple of times where I was thinking, okay, AJ Styles is the number one contender. There's no way they can have him lose. But I was like, is Sheamus actually going to somehow win this thing? Like, what the hell is this going to do for this storyline? Like, it had me believing that it was a very competitive fight. And, yeah, even the end, I thought it was an interesting touch how they had AJ beat Sheamus clean. Because the end with that roll-up, it was in the corner. AJ could have easily put his feet on the ropes and, had a little bit of heel coming out. But no, he didn't even put his feet on the ropes. It was the psychology of him working Sheamus's leg to where when Sheamus finally was on the top rope, he could just chop block the leg out. And that was the winner. So, yeah, it was a wonderful match.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the match. I think Sheamus's recent work, including his work previous against Matt Riddle, he's really, really improving. I think the work in recent weeks has been great. Really like this. I really think it creates AJ as a further heel. what I was liking, I was thinking during the match, oh, why is Amos not doing anything? And this is the first time I've seen Amos really get involved and do stuff. He was at least trying to be callous and heel, and it's good that they're using his presence. What I really did like about it is you think AJ's done enough, and then he hits him further. My biggest query with this was where was Drew McIntyre? Like, you would have thought that this was a perfect spot for Drew to come out, and it was very weird how he didn't. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it makes Drew McIntyre look like he's not a very faithful friend, because you would think in storyline Drew McIntyre was intently watching this match backstage. But I can only assume the reason why creative decided not to have McIntyre come out is because we already got the closing segment later on in the show with McIntyre and AJ. So they didn't want to do a McIntyre-Styles confrontation earlier in the night. By the way, yeah, the chair shots to Sheamus when he was like hung up in the ropes looked wonderful. I mean, I don't know how green Omos is. They won't even, if you notice, they won't even let him get a shot in. He doesn't do anything,
exactly what I was thinking.
which is funny because he looks like a useless bodyguard. So he's supposed to be the guy who protects AJ Styles, but he won't even touch anybody.
I think there's one thing with this, Josh, which I would say. If you remember originally when Shawn Michaels had Diesel and Diesel first came into WWE at the time, Diesel had been Vinny Vegas in WCW. He'd been around. The problem with this is almost like Omos hasn't been to the developmental territory. It's almost like he hasn't gone to the Memphis Power Pro, the Ohio Valley Wrestling. He hasn't gone somewhere like that to be seasoned, which I think is why he's been dumped in this spot because of his look alone. It's a real shame, but obviously, if you believe any of the rumors over the past week, apparently they want him involved a lot in the WrestleMania season. So technically, probably this is why he's on this training course on Tuesday and Thursdays, maybe.
Yeah, probably. So, I mean, I think out of the crop of people who were sent back to training, he's the one who very obviously needs it the most because, yeah, he's just a really tall guy with a great look. But I will tell you, a guy that size, if he can learn to move one foot in front of the other and can develop a certain level of in-ring charisma, it's very easy to have a career when you look like that.
There's one of two ways of looking at it. I remember a story very, very long ago that Dr. Tom Pritchard told me that when he was training the Giant Silver from the Oddities, and he said, although he had a great look, no matter how much they trained him, he was just so green. I think that's the trouble. Do you think Omos has got it in him to become a good wrestler, or is he going to be one that's just there for the gimmick and then nothing more than a valet all on?
You never know. I mean, with tall guys, you can become the great Khali, or you can become the Big Show. And I will tell you, yeah, historically, when you sign a tall guy on the sake of his size, 80% of them are like Giant Silva. There's the 20% like Big Show, The Undertaker, Kane, Kevin Nash. Those are the ones that can make it work. I don't know. I mean, I'm not actually very knowledgeable about what Omos's background was athletically. I assume at some point he played basketball. But as far as combat sports go, I'm not sure if he has any shoot background. I assume he doesn't because of the level of limitation they've put on him getting physical. What really tells me something is the fact that they don't even trust him to throw a working punch on someone. You would think that would be the bare minimum, but no, he doesn't actually touch anyone on Raw.
I agree with you. I think you make some great points for that. Sort of moving forward then. So we then had the Hurt Business backstage. There was some WWE crew member eating the bronuts that were there from last week probably. And it ends up with kind of the Hurt Business bullying this guy. Then Lashley pours a whole gallon of milk over him. For me, I kind of thought this was a funny segment. I thought the gallon of milk was a bit over the top. The one thing that was missing here, clearly this guy's been bullied. It needed a Matt Riddle and probably the New Day maybe to come and make the save, in my opinion. We didn't get that. I get that they were in the next segment after. Do you think that the bullying of this guy was needed, and do you think it sort of added anything overall?
It can if we can figure out where it's going. I mean, yeah, you're right. It would have been a good place for New Day to kind of come in and take up for someone. And I assume if you're going to do a segment where the heel keeps bullying people, innocent people who aren't wrestlers backstage, then there needs to be a payoff one day where one of the babyface wrestlers comes and defends these helpless people. And I don't know if they're going to do that, because if they're not moving with that direction at some point, then yeah, it's totally pointless.
Definitely. We then had a backstage segment with the Hardy Boys. The Hardy Boys was there with a New Day. Riddle turns up. He turns up with the Bronuts again. Riddle said that they should be suggested to replace Big E. He should be called Bro-E. And this was obviously just designed really to promote the next match. So the next match we had in that segment. Oh, sorry. Did you want to add anything in that segment before I jump ahead?
No, we'll just go right to the match. That's fine.
No problem. Okay, so we had a six-man tag. It was the New Day, and it was Jeff Hardy with Riddle outside versus the Hurt Business, Lashley, Alexander, and Benjamin, MVP. Very good match. Really, really enjoyed it. I was surprised to see Riddle not in this match, considering that's kind of the feud with Lashley and Riddle's been building. I enjoyed the match, and more importantly, we got another big win. We got Lashley getting basically the Hurt Lock on Hardy. They got a fair bit of time here. This is once again showing that the Hurt Business are looking strong going into TLC. What were your thoughts on the match?
So I remember you were messaging me about this match before I had even watched Raw, and you were talking about how they had Jeff Hardy in there. But I got to tell you, I pulled a total 180 on my opinion, and I'll tell you why. You know, we've been talking about what WWE is doing with Matt Riddle, whether they're still pushing him, whether they're trying to bury him and turning him into an idiot. But look at it this way. You want to keep New Day strong. You want to keep the Hurt Business strong. In Jeff Hardy, you have someone who's able to take the fall. And I think at this point in his career, taking that fall and tapping out or passing out to the Hurt Lock from Lashley does a lot less damage to Jeff Hardy than it would do to someone like Riddle.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with you. I think you make a good point there. Do you not think it would have been better if Matt Riddle came in after to try and sort of help a bit? Matt Riddle's got literally little or no offense on Lashley in this build so far, would you say?
Yeah, by the way, we need to go ahead and talk about this. I checked out the card for TLC, and I swear they were supposed to do the U.S. title match. It is officially not on the card, by the way.
Not yet. I reckon it's going to be added. We're going to go into the TLC predictions at the end. I think it will still be added. It's not officially on there. You are right with that. I am going to go on something that you said, like sort of off air. Earlier in the week, you did message me and said Riddle would be great as a heel, and this is going towards a heel turn. I think that's a genius idea. Please, can you tell everybody what you said to me? I think it really works well, and I'll go into what I think after.
Absolutely. So we've been talking for a few weeks now about how Matt Riddle is being turned into this comedy kind of act backstage, a sideshow, a guy whose timing is so bad he doesn't have the awareness to think, okay, maybe I shouldn't try to strike up a conversation with someone who's about to make his entrance to the stage. And it's like, where the hell are they going with this? We've had MVP call him a clown. We've had a lot of segments where it's MVP and Matt Riddle. We see the match between them on this Monday's Raw. But I started thinking, well, a few weeks ago, you were having a conversation about a rumor of turning Matt Riddle heel, and I said it probably couldn't work. But you know the comparisons between the Hurt Business and the Nation of Domination. What if Matt Riddle becomes the Owen Hart? To think to where these constant jabs and this pushing by MVP to take himself more seriously, he finally realizes he needs to be more serious, but he doesn't have to be that serious because, see, the reason why I said a heel Matt Riddle couldn't work is because I don't see how a guy with that demeanor could cut these promos and actually come across as a heel. His in-ring work is great. His in-ring aggression could be good as a heel. Then I realized with MVP as his mouthpiece, heel Matt Riddle could completely work.
I really like it. I could see Matt Riddle in a... Have you ever seen the film Karate Kid 3? Oh, Karate Kid 2 even. It's Karate Kid 3, actually. Did you ever see that film?
What's his Terry Silver is actually one of my favorite villains of all time.
I could see him doing a Terry Silver type gimmick. Do you think it would work? I think it would.
I think with MVP and the other guys in the Hurt Business too, kind of surrounding him to where all he has to do is use his legitimate MMA background to beat people up in the ring, it could absolutely work. Actually, I'll go ahead and lay out for you the idea that I had. So
go for it.
If we do Riddle versus Lashley at TLC, have Riddle lose. MVP can cut a little promo either at TLC or on Raw about how he's not taking himself seriously. Riddle goes to Jeff Hardy. They form the Hardy Bros. And you can have them do a couple of weeks where they're winning matches together, looking like a good team. And that leads to a match between the Hardy Bros and MVP and Lashley. In the match, Riddle turns on Jeff Hardy and then joins the Hurt Business. That's exactly how I would book it.
I like it. That sounds fun. Let's see if it happens in the coming weeks. But no, great shout there. Moving forward, then another thing with that match, just before we go on to the next segment, another key thing at the end of the match, we had Cedric Alexander acting like he'd won the lottery again, and the rest of his Hurt Business colleagues weren't that. Are you a big fan of this Cedric Alexander being bigger than the Hurt Business storyline? I'm enjoying it so far.
I like it. I mean, I think most people see the direction it looks like it's going is that he's going to outgrow them and they're going to kick him out and probably turn him back into a singles babyface or something like that. The funny thing about him celebrating, so sometimes when I have Raw playing, like I'll check down on my phone or, I'm doing other things around my room. And so I was watching the match, but then I saw him celebrating when I looked up and I was like, wait, didn't Lashley just submit Jeff Hardy? So I actually had to rewind it to watch the finish again because I was like, did I miss a spot where Cedric Alexander won the match for the Hurt Business? No, I mean, That's how effective his celebration
Yeah, no,
was.
he's very good. I think he's done some great work recently. Kind of going into the next match, we had the dream match of Lana versus Nia Jax. Obviously, this is a WrestleMania main event coming early. That's a bit sarcastic of me, sorry. This was a very quick match. Didn't really enjoy it. Lana got the win by a fluke by pushing Nia Jax off the pinfall, off the turnbuckle rather, in 2 minutes. So Nia Jax losing, women's tag team champion losing, Lana getting the win here. Obviously, after the match, we then got Lana celebrating. And what she didn't realise was obviously Oscar was backstage and been taken out by Shayna Baszler. We then get sort of Jax taking out Lana from behind. And then we then get obviously Baszler as well. They're just totally utterly beating down Oscar to the point, or not also beating down Lana to the point of Oscar having to run in. Obviously, this was an okay kind of match. I didn't like the sort of match itself, but the aftermath was interesting. What were your thoughts of the match and what happened after?
So one thing, did you notice that the finish of that match was almost identical to the finish to AJ Styles and Sheamus?
Yeah, I think they had that finish like 3 times. I'm pretty sure I heard that somewhere.
Probably. It's just a night of roll-ups.
Yeah, three different times. But I get it. They obviously paid off the big Lana win with the victory. And I get that. I get it. You're making everybody feel sorry for Lana. And then obviously what we then do is obviously get the big announcement that Lana apparently is going to be out of this TLC match on Sunday. And what was your thoughts of the big announcement and the fact that we're now not getting Oscar and Lana challenging for the tag team titles?
So one thing I did want to point out, Lana, we've seen her get pushed more and more and kind of evolving as an in-ring performer. I thought during the beatdown, her selling was actually very good. I felt very sorry for her. I mean, she was crying. I mean, we know she has experience as an actress, but she was able to make herself cry. She's begging for Nia and Shayna to stop. She realizes she's completely powerless. All she can do is beg them to stop. That was pretty effective. That's some of the best work I've seen out of Lana. But yeah, so here was my idea. This is the first TLC to where we do have 2 TLC matches, but in the past, we've always had at least a table match, table alone, ladder match, even a chairs match at some point. And so I thought with this angle between Nia Jax and Lana that the ultimate payoff would be TLC, where you can do a table match and finally see Lana put Nia Jax through a table, and that would win the match. It seemed very obvious to me, but now like Shayna Baszler's been there, Asuka's been there, but the focus has been on the other 2. And so, yeah, now we're not getting that. I mean, as far as now is concerned, the only payoff we got was this match from Raw.
Yeah, let's go into it then. So the trouble with this is you've been building this since September 14th. Your sole focus of the women's Raw division has been Lana, and you've had this build, yet your women's champion Oscar has been neglected been stuck in this feud. Not a fan of this. This is the second month WWE have done something like this. Clearly last month at Survivor Series, they were building up Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose to be in that tag match that got pulled the week of the show. And the fact that this injury apparently isn't legitimate, it's just one that's weird. Why do you think WWE have changed their mind with this storyline after sort of building since September? Isn't it really kind of amateurish to a certain point?
I really don't know. It all depends on where they're going. I mean, now we're going to see Asuka with another partner, and I'll save my predictions for that for later. But what I'll do later on is I'll kind of lay out the different paths they can go, and I just assume someone backstage heavily proposed one of those paths.
Okay, you got to admit it's a bit weird how the last 2 months running they've changed the women's match at the last moment almost. It just seems to be very crazy. It's crazy time to change it right beforehand.
Yeah, because you had such an obvious ending. Maybe they thought it was too obvious. I don't know. Obvious, but still good. I mean, there's certain things to where it's going to happen. Daniel Bryan's win at WrestleMania. You knew it had to happen because that's how you complete the story. I thought that Lana putting Nia Jax through a table it had to happen.
I think the only way I could kind of pay this off is maybe delaying Lana sort of coming back to a certain point. It's going to mean when she does come back, she'll come back an even bigger star to a certain point. Which is maybe in this time that she's away, they can give her some extra lessons at the Performance Center like the rest of the other wrestlers they're doing at the moment, maybe.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
I don't know. Manny J's a bit harsh, but interesting choice. But I'll definitely go into my prediction when we do TLC later in the show. We then had another segment. We had Elias in the ring. Elias this time was joined by the returning Jackson Riker. And this segment was absolutely wrestle crap, to be fair. What they were doing is obviously preaching. Jackson Riker said, ever since Alliance got electrocuted, he started hearing the music, and it just was designed basically for R-Truth to come out. R-Truth comes out and interrupts them. Jackson Riker doesn't actually do anything. He just lets R-Truth sort of go on and spill. Ends up with the 24/7 division kind of running out. Jackson Riker just takes out everybody. And it's just kind of a total throwaway segment. What do you make of Jackson Riker returning after them supposed controversial comments earlier in kind of the year?
So I want to point out that if you ever want to know how sometimes the dirt sheets have it dead wrong, including Dave Meltzer, look at this. Because when we saw Wesley Blake and Steve Cutler pop up as King Corbin's new entourage on SmackDown, dirt sheets started saying, oh, you know, those are the two of the Forgotten Sons. Jackson Riker, he must be done. They even went as far as to say, oh, he's going to be fired soon.
Yeah, they did. They said he was gone. They said he'd be on the next releases.
I mean, I'm not saying everything they report on is dead wrong, but it does prove that sometimes they are dead wrong, and sometimes they have no clue what they're talking about. And Jackson Riker was definitely the case. I actually know Jackson Riker. I mean, back when he was Gunner, he's from North Carolina, and he worked quite a few shows around the South. And so, yeah, I announced a few of his shows. He's not a bad guy. I think putting him with someone like Elias, because he's never really been very good on the mic. He's got a great look. He can be decent in the ring, but Elias, someone who's charismatic like that it's not a bad team up. Actually, on Raw Talk, I think it was Paul Heyman who said they could kind of be stunt doubles, almost like the Miz and the Damian Sandow thing.
If we look at a positive on it, it certainly gives Elias someone else to kind of team up with. I think it gives Jackson something to do. They could be a good team, and it was quite an impressive kind of debut on the main show, because obviously they was on main event before. But I think it was a great way to get this new gimmick over. I really hope that it leads somewhere. For me, my only concern with it is they're particularly in the 24/7 division, which it just doesn't normally go anywhere decent, if that makes sense.
Here, wait. So put the camera over on me, and I'll show you my thoughts on the 24/7 stuff.
Yeah, no, okay. I think it's okay. That's fine. We said this
throwaway. It's throwaway. I mean, I enjoy some of the segments, but this one is stupid. If I were any of the guys in it, I might consider quitting my job. I probably wouldn't, because the money's really good. But still, like, we see like Eric from the Viking Raiders, Drew Gulak, the Lucha guys. Like, it's guys that the company. Imagine showing up to Raw and being told, "Oh yeah, you're going to play this never-ending chase game with the 24/7 title, and that's all we have for you." Like, it could send you in such a spiral of depression if you think that's all you're good for as a performer. And like, it's just, I don't know. I'm over it. The stupid chase. Are we really supposed to believe that they're chasing R-Truth for 3 hours straight?
Yeah, I know. It's comedic, isn't it? Let's be fair. We then went to we had a Keith Lee versus Miz and Morrison handicap match. For me, I wasn't particularly a massive fan of this match. I think it was, unfortunately, some of Keith Lee's worst work. It's not his fault. I think the pressure this guy's under, you can see, it's almost like he's second-guessing himself. I felt that this match didn't really give him any credit, and it obviously just had him kind of not just basically kicking out nonsensical to a certain point. We obviously got Miz and Morrison getting the win. Obviously, both of them pinned. I feel sorry for Keith Lee. Clearly, this guy at the moment is obviously under a lot of pressure, and he's not really getting that chance. I think this was just a throwaway match, really, which is a shame. It didn't really show off his best work. What were your thoughts?
They need to figure out what they're going to do with Keith Lee. What everyone knows, it's funny that they just put out the documentary about him on the WWE Network. It seems like he has his share of supporters in the company. And I think everyone knows that Keith Lee has all of the tools to become a huge superstar. I will say a couple of things. First of all, even though he did lose, Keith Lee did look very strong in that match. He continuously kicked out, not just kick out, but they were calling it on commentary, powering out of these moves multiple times. And even with the finish, you had Miz and Morrison, who were both allowed in the ring at the same time in this handicap match. You have them both covering Keith Lee. And right after 3, he still throws both of them off. And the commentators pointed that out as well. I'll also say that when I saw the match, I kind of wanted Keith Lee to get the win. I felt like he needed the win. But with the angle you're doing with Drew McIntyre and the WWE title, I was thinking, can they really afford to have The Miz lose even to someone like Keith Lee? Because The Miz has already gotten squashed multiple times by Drew McIntyre. He needs to get some kind of win. He needs to have some kind of redeemable threat. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess Morrison could have taken the fall to Keith Lee, but then what does that really do? I mean, yeah, they wanted to make The Miz and Morrison look a little stronger after having them lose consistently on Raw. I do hate that Keith Lee had to be the victim in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping he does. He goes on to sort of bigger and better things. It's a shame. Ever since he's debuted on the main roster, following beating Randy Orton, he's unfortunately been really mistreated, and it's just a shame. Really, I think Vince really needs to get behind him. This after class work on Tuesdays and Thursdays totally unnecessary. This guy's a fantastic worker. If he'd have been built right, he could have been up there challenging for the world title again, sort of going into TLC really. But it's just a shame. But we'll see where they go. I'm interested to see if they keep jobbing him, whether it's going to lead to him turning heel. Maybe he gets so frustrated he could be a heel. Would you like to see him potentially join the Hurt Business, or do you think that'd be he's going to be too similar to Bobby Lashley in that respect?
I think we were talking before we went on the air about the possible plans for him to win the Rumble. I think he needs to be a baby face in that role. I think if we're going to see him pursuing, especially with the documentary they've just done, they've kind of portrayed him as this rags to riches type story. He needs to be a baby face if he's going to be moving up into the challenger picture, at least for right now. I think if you're going to turn him heel, you should turn him heel after he wins the championship. Because his bask in the glory could have a certain level of cockiness, of arrogance to it. But I don't think him as a challenger, as the bad guy, is as much of a draw as him as the baby face.
Definitely. I think the dream match for me, if they could start giving him a win streak, would be him versus Lashley at WrestleMania. I think that's something that if you get both of them on win streaks, Lashley obviously is on a win streak, give Keith Lee a win streak as well. I think that would be a dream match. Would you like to see that at Mania potentially?
Yeah, that would be very good. There's obviously some comparisons between the two, but some very clear differences as well. I think that, in the same way that Bobby Lashley's all right as a babyface. I feel like at this point in his career, he definitely works better as a heel. So he's kind of the antithesis to Keith Lee.
Yeah,
the foil.
Have you got anything else you want to add?
Let's keep it moving, baby.
No problem. We then had Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt basically have another promo. It ended up in them being sort of being involved in a game of hide and seek. What were your thoughts on this promo? Did you take anything from it? It was just jokes, wasn't it?
Yeah, I kind of expected more, because this is one of the main things of Raw they've been promoting for the last week, is that Bray Wyatt's taking a Firefly Funhouse field trip to Tropicana Field. And all we really got was his puppets in the corner ringside, and then we saw them pop up a few times backstage. But besides that, it was just a promo by Bray Wyatt in the ring, to where they've acknowledged in the past that if you want to get to the Funhouse, it's not far from the arena. There's been a few wrestlers who, during the course of a show, have gone to the Funhouse. And so if you had just done a Firefly Funhouse and have Randy Orton, tell Bray Wyatt to come find him, it still could have worked. I just think you could have done more with this fact that, Bray Wyatt this week, he's not in the Funhouse, he's actually coming to the arena. Well, then do a little more with that.
I agree.
I guess they did. I guess they did with what we got later on.
Yeah, fair point. I think the main thing this segment's missing more than anything, the last 2 weeks, it's not had Alexa Bliss. They haven't been able to elevate this feud and this storyline because Alexa's not been there. It really needed her to have taken an RKO or something like that to elevate it, and they've had to make do with these past 2 weeks where it's been a bit sort of boring to a certain point. But would you agree Alexa's been a big miss so far?
Yeah, man. I guess Punky Brewster's still going on. I will say, I noticed on all the graphics for TLC that they were showing throughout Raw, she's on there with him. So I can only assume that she's going to be back on Sunday.
Yeah, she should be, surely. I would hope so anyway. We then went into another interesting match. We had Mace versus Ricochet. And this one was okay. It was a bit of a mess. Clearly, Mace was only able to get the win once everybody in sort of Retribution got involved. It once again is led to basically Ali trying to get Ricochet to join Retribution. What did you make of this and the rare win for Retribution here?
I was surprised that Mace got the win. I thought that Ricochet was going to... it's been a while since we've seen Ricochet actually get a win. He got the win in the tag match last week, but that was Dana Brooke who got the win for them. Before that, he lost to Slapjack, and now he lost to Mace. It makes me wonder if they are ultimately going to do the spot where Ricochet gets beat into joining Retribution. We've talked about the issues with that. We've talked about a lot of the problems that Retribution were facing. But yeah, Mace was one of the other guys who's been sent back to the PC for training. I guess they had this match to kind of, see what you can do, kid. The finish wasn't bad. You don't see, actually this finish you don't see very often, to where one guy hits a move and the person kicks out, then that same guy remains in control, picks him up and just hits another move and then gets the win. Mace isn't terrible. I did find that out. I mean, he's green. I mean, he's definitely above Omos. He's definitely not Keith Lee, but I wasn't unimpressed by what we saw from him, actually.
I got two fins with this. Two really good fins that kind of I noticed to a certain point. One of them was pretty obvious. The other one was, did you notice the commentary that we had Ali on commentary and he went to Samoa Joe, oh, Mace used to sit in your seat. I thought that was a really kind of shoot comment to a certain point. I was surprised they did that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a few acknowledgments of Mia Yim or Reckoning, but that was the first acknowledgement that Mace is the former Dio Madden.
Definitely. And the other one we noticed, obviously, I think as well, is this is clearly going to be going forward. This is the one of the feuds and one angles WWE have got long-term plans for, supposedly, if you believe this week's dirt sheets.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know how this, to be honest, I don't know how this lifts either Ricochet or Retribution. I'm yet to be impressed, so we'll see what happens next.
Wait, let me ask one rhetorical question. With the level of rewrites they do before Raw and SmackDown, is there even any such thing as long-term WWE plans?
This is the only plan. This is what they got planned so far for going forward, apparently. The Ricochet Retribution is the main storyline to move things forward, apparently, with the group. So let me guess, Miriam leaves and we get Ricochet in place, maybe, but we'll see. I don't know how this is.
It's not terrible, actually.
The trouble is, Ricochet is a great worker, but he's not exactly he's not exactly that level. They need somebody of a Braun Strowman level or that level above, really. The problem is, because Ali's your leader, and Ali's only ever been kind of a mid-carder, you can't probably get somebody higher, because it obviously overthrows him to a certain point.
Yeah, you're right.
We then had another fun segment. We had Bray Wyatt backstage. Bray walks up to Riddle, and Riddle basically went up to Ramblin' Rabbit and asked him to sign. For me, I thought this is such a waste of Matt Riddle. Poor Riddle is stuck in this gimmick. He looks such a inconvenience again to everybody. I just think it further paints Matt Riddle as just a roid head, and the sole focus of this to a certain point is they just want to basically get him over these donuts over at all costs, it seems, instead of Matt Riddle's career. I think WWE are missing a trick with this so far. I'm getting a bit bored of it.
Yeah, are they going to sell the bro nuts on WWE
Of course, it'll be like the New Day cereal, won't it? It's like the New Day cereal. I mean, it's exactly the same thing.
I don't know. Matt Riddle is right now a joke. And
it's sad because he's so good.
This only works for me if they're going. Well, I say he's a joke, and he has been. We'll get to his match later on. Surprised me.
Yeah, no
problem.
This segment
is just why the hell, man?
Yeah, no problem. We then had a match between Shayna Baszler, Dana Brooke. Shayna Baszler, obviously women's champion. Dana Brooke coming off her recent wins off Reckoning. This was a really short match. It just ended up with basically Nia Jax basically attacking Dana after the match. Dana got the win by disqualification, and it ended up with them basically beating down sort of Dana, and then Oscar had to come out, and that was enough. And then we eventually got the returning Mandy Rose come out. It was only really when we got three of them against two, they done a runner. This is obviously designed to lead to the announcement that obviously Oscar's going to have to get a new partner. What was your thoughts of this match?
So, you sent me some news that reportedly some matches and segments went longer than expected on Raw. My assumption would be this match is one of the two that was probably trimmed a little bit. I assumed they were going to give Dana and Shayna, that's good. They were going to give them a little longer in the match. The whole point of it, though, was just to establish the return of Mandy Rose.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously it makes sense for her to come back. The fact that she came back with the stick, she couldn't get the job done. It was only when Oscar came out that they done. I think the problem with this, while Oscar's involved with this, it's just, as I said, we need to get her to go back to a singles wrestler. As I said in last week's show, I think that's overdue. Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, how long is her women's title going to be an afterthought?
Yeah, definitely. Have you got anything else to add before we go to the next comedic segment?
We'll keep it rolling. We got another one.
Another comedic. There's so much on this show that's comedic. I thought this was great. You may not have. There's another backstage segment with R-Truth. He's talking about getting a PlayStation 6 because PlayStation 5 is sold out. That then involves him talking to Huskus. He said that Bray Wyatt is his father. It was just a total utter 5 minutes. More time wasted, but I enjoyed it. It just shows the level of of these wrestlers, basically.
Yeah, that segment was good. R-Truth is generally good.
He's funny. He's comedic. He's the Crash Holly without the interest, really, for me. I think he's good fun, but then when you're associating...
for years, he's been able to take the dumbest content. Like when you read the script, it's like, this is ridiculous, and still turn it into something that's good.
I thought it was funny. I'm surprised Vince knew what the PlayStation 5 was, to be honest. But there we go. Carry on.
Yeah.
But no, there we go. So we then had another segment. Bray Wyatt's obviously trying to play hide and seek. And what it ends up with is Bray Wyatt sees like a rocking chair, and obviously he just sits on it. We then get Randy Orton basically attacking from behind. There's almost like a metal casket there. It ends up with sort of Randy Orton locking Bray Wyatt in the casket. He then pours petrol on it. He then sets it on fire. You're really starting to feel sorry for Wyatt. You're thinking, oh my God, he's been set on fire. Then from nowhere, the Fiend comes out of the casket, and it's almost like the Fiend's untouched. It's almost like there's no stopping him. Fiend basically gets the mandible claw on Randy Orton, and then that's kind of the end of the segment, basically. What was your thoughts of this segment and overall what happened at the end?
I thought it was pretty good, but this is actually the very first thing that I messaged you about after I got done watching Raw. And what I pointed out, Randy Orton has a very bad history of very bad luck with lighting people on fire. We saw him do it with Undertaker in the casket, and then Taker came back stronger than ever later on. We saw him with Corporate Kane. He locked him in something and set him on fire. He came out as the masked monster Kane. And now we see him lighting Bray Wyatt on fire, comes back out as the Fiend, and chokes him out. Yeah, Randy, when will you learn? Don't light anyone on fire because it never works out for you.
I think this was the fact there was the fire in the segment. I enjoyed that. I think this was an impromptu spot because they didn't have Alexa available. They had to come up with this, and it was okay. This just shows that the Fiend doesn't sell anything. I could not believe that he kind of evolved into the Fiend, and there was no sort of consequences of Bray being burnt. It was a risky segment. A lot of people could have got injured, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting, but it once again shows that the Fiend's got the momentum going into this Sunday's pay-per-view, in my opinion.
Yeah. I did want to point out one other thing that amuses me. Whenever they do a segment with fire, you mentioned how they always have the petrol can, like they're pouring petrol on. It's very clearly lighter fluid. And the funny thing is, if they poured that amount of petrol onto something, Randy Orton would have set himself on fire. It's just always funny because like petrol, gasoline, we call it. You just need a little drop of it to light that on fire. And they just doused the whole thing to where the whole room would have exploded if it was petrol.
No, I agree with you. I've got one other thing on that. Do you not think it would have been much more cooler that when they put sort of Bray in the casket and it gets set on fire, they had some sort of flashback of when the sort of cottage burned down before? I think that would have been good if they had something like that, and you could have had that metamorphosis of the Fiend coming out then. But really, I think the Fiend should see fire. And for me, based on what Bray saw, I actually think the Fiend should be scared of fire. That's what I think. I think it's a small thing, but I think that could have been a good tool for Randy to maybe sort of find a weakness in the Fiend other than Alexa to a certain point. I think they missed that chance there.
That's a good touch. Yeah,
It's a bit
I like
out there,
that.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's good though. It's good.
We then go into the sort of dream match, the Big League Wrestling dream match. We had Riddle and MVP. Clearly, you know these two people pretty well. What were your thoughts of the match and any fun memories?
So, just like we said about Dana and Shayna, I think given how some of the segments ran longer, this match was probably cut for time. We've mentioned how Matt Riddle's been booked to look like a joke, but in this match, he pretty much squashes MVP. And I was kind of surprised about that because it makes you kind of wonder, okay, so he's a joke backstage, but in the ring, he's totally competent. And I mean, but going back to what we were saying earlier, I think that they are just setting up some kind of angle with MVP and Matt Riddle and extensively Matt Riddle and the Hurt Business.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd like to see it. Hopefully we see that. In terms of the match, it was a very quick match. I didn't get much time. I enjoyed it. It's great that Riddle's winning. I think the aftermath where we got Lashley running into the ring and Riddle quickly getting out with the Bronuts, this definitely has to lead to the match at TLC or soon. They're definitely going to have a match soon. If not, I don't know why they're having sort of Riddle and MVP against each other, really. I think it was just a throwaway, but they gave the right man the win. But clearly the number one contender, probably to United States title, got the win here. It was the right choice for me. I think they made that well. It's just a shame they didn't get the time. And I think, as you said, I think definitely the other spots rolled over longer. It's a real shame they didn't get more time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I feel like they probably did on paper. They had to just that show spot in the card. I think it was right before the ending segment with AJ Styles and Drew McIntyre. It was definitely in the third hour. That's the hour where everything's gotten backed up, so you're gonna have to make the cuts because it was a BLW reunion. I mean.
You do know that this was the main event of the show. That match, this 1 minute match.
It was technically the main event. Yeah, that's true. The last match, it was.
Yeah, this one. We then went into the championship ascension ceremony. This was done basically is to build up the match between AJ Styles and Drew. Obviously, what it ended up doing is AJ Styles and Drew basically trading insults for a large part of it. We then get basically Miz and Morrison running out. They then basically beat down Drew with Styles. McIntyre seems to get momentum, and then obviously by the end of it, we're getting Styles basically putting McIntyre on the table and jumping up the ladder and jumping through it. The show basically ends with Styles climbing up the ladder and getting the belt. For me, a couple of thoughts. I thought this was a real missed opportunity. You would have thought that Sheamus or somebody would have come out to try and make the save here. I thoroughly enjoyed the work. Almost once again, I thought she was a spare part, didn't really do anything. And I'm enjoying this. I really like the way the teasing Styles getting the belt. I enjoyed this. I just think they've done I was really surprised we didn't get any sort of baby faces or anybody trying to stop this trio tearing apart Drew to a certain point. What was your thoughts?
Well, you have to remember, I was actually surprised they didn't give a medical update on him like they were doing with Lana. Sheamus was pretty much taken out earlier in the night. I think it could almost be that they did that to where Sheamus won't even be a factor in the TLC match on Sunday. I think it really established the point that Miz and Morrison, all TLC matches are no disqualification. Miz and Morrison are going to play a role in this match, and their interests are to get the title onto AJ Styles in a way that benefits both of them, especially the Miz. That's the way I took it. I thought it was a pretty good segment. AJ Styles, as he did at Survivor Series and as he's doing now, plays his part to perfection. The part with Miz and Morrison coming in, I actually didn't see coming. Or I didn't see it coming in the way that they did it, where they kind of came out from under the ring and jumped in there and turned the ladder over onto McIntyre. Do you
not think this was a spot where they could have brought in Keith Lee to make the save to a certain point, following on what happened earlier in the show? Or do you think, obviously he's not involved in the title picture, I understand that, but I think that would have been a good spot to bring him in, really, maybe.
Yeah, put the camera over onto me. I did this right now as you were saying it. That's nerd. I like that. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Carry on what you
No.
saying.
That's a fantastic point. I was just going to say, in terms of booking a beatdown spot, it wasn't a total massacre of Drew McIntyre. They had a few spots where he was fighting back and defiantly taking it down. Speaking of defiance, this was very good. The ending shot was AJ Styles on top of the ladder, climbing up the ladder and grabbing the title. I loved how Drew McIntyre didn't just lay there. He climbed up a few rungs of it, but he was so weak he fell off. But you love this fact that Drew McIntyre never loses that fight in him. That's very nice.
I think I was looking at that spot and I was kind of looking at the whole thing and I thought, when Drew started taking out three of them, I thought, oh no, this booking is horrendous. But by the end of it, and with the booking throughout the show, AJ Styles looks $1 million going into this event on Sunday. And I think this was a great go-home segment. I think this did exactly what it needed to do. It really creates what Sunday's about to a certain point. Have you got anything else you want to add to the show before we score it?
The promo work actually before Miz and Morrison came in was also very good. I thought AJ's promo talking about how, McIntyre's never been in a TLC match. AJ Styles has not only been in one, but he's won them. He's got more experience talking about, AJ's point that, McIntyre, they're both champions, but McIntyre doesn't have as much experience with keeping the title. And AJ's like, that's what I specialize in. Like, I'm going to win it and I'm going to be the champion. And McIntyre talking about, how winning this thing's one thing, keeping it is a whole different thing, and that's my goal now. It was good. I liked it a lot.
Okay, so I'm going to go into kind of my score now of the show. So I thought Raw overall this week, I thought it was okay. The first hour was really, really good. After that, it got very, very kind of repetitive for me. I think it's getting kind of very repetitive week on week now. They need to kind of do some stuff that's different. I think they're doing a lot of the same type of people against each other. And I think there's not enough stuff built for me to continue watching sort of week on week. They don't create a lot of intrigue or angles where there's question marks and stuff. They tend to start stuff and drop it. In terms of the score this week, I'm going to go for, I think this was a 6 out of 10 for me again. I think it was okay. There was nothing really outstanding. I felt a couple of good parts. I think the promo work was fun generally throughout the show, but there's nothing really apart from Lana being at the show that I was like, wow, that's a shock. What was your score and rating overall the show before we do TLC?
Everybody could probably hear me just say, damn it, that was my exact same score. And I'll tell you why I picked 6. 5 is right in the middle. This show had some good and some bad. I felt like it had just a little more good than bad, and 6 is the perfect number for that.
Perfect. Is there anything else you want to add before we go into TLC?
Now, let's talk about TLC. We've been alluding to so much with this Go Home Raw, so let's get to what we're really talking about.
Okay, this coming Sunday's TLC. Okay, so let's start at the top then. So let's go for the Universal title. We'll start at the top. It's Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens. This is another TLC match. When we look at this has been built up pretty well. I think Roman Reigns, obviously, he's been unstoppable. He beat Drew previously at Survivor Series. He's beat Jey Uso back in Hell in a Cell. He's not lost a match really, but sort of by pinfall this year, from what I remember. Looking at it, he's only lost so far since his return. It was this past week on SmackDown, which was only by disqualification. When we look at his opponent, we've got Kevin Owens, obviously. Kevin Owens, obviously, he's done some great work recently. He beat Jey Uso, and he's also got that disqualification victory over Roman Reigns and Jey Uso this past week. For me, I think this is going to be a fun match. I think in ring it'll be great, but there is only one winner. I think Roman Reigns here to retain. I don't see anything changing. Maybe Jey Uso may get involved, but even without Jey Uso's help, Roman Reigns is going to retain the belt here. What's your prediction and thoughts of the feud so far?
I like the feud. Kevin Owens, I think because of how much he, in his very nature, goes against the grain of what a typical pro wrestler looks like and does, they've always used him as kind of a rebellious babyface. I mean, I think Owens still works better as a heel, but if you're going to book him as a babyface, it's usually a guy who's kind of anti-authority, anti-establishment. And right now, SmackDown's being ruled by the tribal chief, the Samoan dynasty. So Kevin Owens is a great babyface to stand up to that. But having said all that, as you just talked about, Roman Reigns is one of the flag bearers of WWE. Heel Roman Reigns. He's really never been better than he is right now. And he's not dropping the title anytime soon, and it's not going to be to Kevin Owens.
Well said. Is there anything else you want to add before we go into the other world title match?
No, let's talk about that one too. That one's interesting.
That is a fun one. So, WWE World Title match, TLC again. It's Drew McIntyre, AJ Styles. If we look at the champion, Drew, obviously he's had the belt since he won it back. He kind of won the belt back, and that was back on Raw back in the start of November. He's only lost really since then. He lost to kind of Roman Reigns. He also has been on a really good run. He has basically been pretty unstoppable this year. He doesn't really lose matches. He only lost to Randy Orton once. Clearly before that, he's beat people such as Keith Lee. He's beat Randy Orton numerous times. He's even beat Jey Uso. For me, I think he's been a really strong champion. When we look at his opponent, we look at AJ Styles. AJ Styles obviously recently beat Sheamus. He beat Keith Lee. He's beat Randy Orton. He's beat Riddle. He's beat Hardy. This guy's been really well built since he came over to Raw. His most recent win against Sheamus this past week on Raw was a fantastic win. And when we look at this match has got a lot of question marks for me. I think we're looking at it could go one or two ways. I think the obvious way for me would be Drew McIntyre. The only way Drew McIntyre doesn't win the belt is if AJ Styles has help, and that's got to be from Miz and Morrison. For me, though, I think your winner here is going to be Drew McIntyre. I think they're going to save the cash in for another day. I think AJ Styles will go on to something else after this. What's your prediction and thoughts of the feud?
So before, what happened with Raw this past Monday, I would have said, I don't see Roman Reigns or Drew McIntyre losing their titles anytime soon. With that said, given the fact that Raw got, some low ratings and they're thinking about panicking and doing a massive reset, I wouldn't put them past moving the title to Styles. The only issue that I have with it, if AJ Styles beat McIntyre and we hadn't seen McIntyre lose to Randy Orton a couple of months ago at Hell in a Cell, it wouldn't have been as bad. But I feel like if you have Drew McIntyre lose the title twice in the span of 2 months, how much damage does that do to him long term as a credible contender for the title? The Miz, I guess you could do a cash in. I did say back when they brought in Omos that the point was to have AJ Styles in the WWE title picture. I feel like AJ Styles as WWE champion could work. I just don't think they can afford to have McIntyre lose right now, given what he's been doing. I think McIntyre keeps it for now.
Yeah, I think McIntyre sees the year end out as champion. I just don't see him losing. I'll be shocked if he has. I'm going to put my own money on this match actually. So I'm definitely going to
literally
putting my own money on this match. So I think McIntyre to win. I can't see Styles winning. I may be wrong. Obviously, the ratings with Raw we will get to later, but I think it's going to be McIntyre. The only chance really of imagine if we do get Styles win, Miz cashing on Styles. I don't know how that really works for me. I think two heels of each other, but I don't know. It's going to be a good match either way, isn't it?
Yes, it will be a very
match of the night, probably.
I mean, AJ Styles is one of those guys who was made for specialty matches. He was made for cage matches. He's made for TLC matches.
Definitely. Have you got anything else to add before we go into the SmackDown Women's title?
No, let's talk about those girls.
Okay, so we got Sasha Banks, the defending champion, facing Carmella. When we look at this, obviously Sasha Banks has been on a really good run since she got the belt. She beat Asuka back at Survivor Series. She beat Bayley before that, and she's obviously been pretty good this year. She's had a lot of big wins. She's even sort of beat Naomi as well. She's done some really good stuff. And when we look at her opponent, Carmella obviously hasn't really done anything. She only beat Mandy Rose back in April. Her first match back was this past week on SmackDown, where it was disqualification. She got the win by disqualification. For me, they've already given this match away 1 week on TV before, which I'm surprised at. But I only see one winner, and this is another one I'm going to put my own money on. I think Sasha Banks is winning here, even with Carmella's new associate. I don't think that comes into it. I just can't see him taking the belt off Sasha Banks here. And I think this feud, I've not been a massive fan of it. I just don't get really why Carmella's in this spot. She hasn't really done anything. She wasn't on TV for months. I know she's been repackaged, but there's far better people, such as Bianca Belair, that probably should be in Carmella's spot, in my opinion. What's your thoughts?
They're saving the Bianca Belair.
It's
That's the
WrestleMania,
reason
isn't
you're
it?
not. Yeah, that's the reason you're not saying it. But it's also probably the reason why we're not going to see Sasha drop the title. Yeah, I mean, it's weird how this match is now a SmackDown rematch because they already gave it to us, and obviously it was a disqualification finish. But still, the fans have visibly seen Carmella and Sasha Banks face each other in the ring. I fully expect Sasha to keep the title. I think they had Carmella kind of come in, sort of the same thing with Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. They needed someone to be the challenger. They couldn't afford to have Bianca Belair be it because they don't want to give that match away yet. Oh, Carmella's just coming back. She's been cutting these promos. Let's throw her into it. Carmella's not the best wrestler in WWE, but she's also not the worst. She can go. She is a former women's champion. She's not terrible in that position.
Are you surprised they gave it away on free TV last week, as much as they did?
Yeah. I just can assume they had nothing else to come up with, so they thought, oh, we'll hook people in by the fact that we're going to do a TLC match early.
No problem. Is there anything else you want to add before we go into the next match?
What's next?
We've got The Fiend versus Randy Orton. So let's break this down. We've obviously got The Fiend. He's been on a pretty good run. Obviously, he's only ever really lost to Goldberg, and obviously he previously lost to sort of Roman Reigns in that triple threat with Braun Strowman as well. If we look at, obviously, Bray Wyatt / The Fiend's recent form, clearly, obviously, he's beat The Miz. Bray Wyatt beat The Miz. The Fiend beat Kevin Owens back in October. The Fiend doesn't really lose. He only lost to Goldberg. That's the only real loss. I remember him in a singles match losing. And when we look at kind of his opponent in Randy Orton obviously has lost to AJ Styles. He's lost to Drew McIntyre. He has beat Keith Lee. He lost to Keith Lee as well. I think it's one of them where we're looking at this. I think if this was Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton, as we had on Raw this week, I think Randy Orton would have a chance. But for me, there's only one winner here. It has to be The Fiend that wins this. I think if The Fiend loses it, it's not going to do any good. And the only thing I would say is when these guys obviously met previously back in 2017 at WrestleMania and also the Horror House as well, Bray Wyatt won both, if that's any omen to go by. But for me, your winner here is going to be The Fiend. The only reason why The Fiend won't win is if Alexa Bliss does get involved and it somehow distracts The Fiend to lose. What's your prediction and thoughts?
The Fiend can't afford to lose. Everyone talks about how, when The Fiend first came in, he was unstoppable. He was a phenomenon, like The Undertaker. And then The Fiend lost a good deal of his mojo when Goldberg beat him. You can't afford to have him lose again anytime soon. That's the issue. The Fiend, actually, I mean, we've seen The Fiend get some wins this year, but he needs a very defining one. And I think beating Randy Orton could be that year-end redemption that he gets to where 2021 will have some very high prospects for him.
I've got two things here. I would say, are you surprised there's not some sort of gimmick with this match? Because obviously The Fiend, whenever he's been in the singles match without the gimmickry, it's struggled a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you've got an event all about tables, ladders, and chairs. It doesn't even really matter which one you throw in there. It wouldn't be bad as a chairs match, just some kind of weapon where they can beat the hell out of each other. Because The Fiend is not the kind, it's just like Mick Foley. He's not the kind of guy who's going to get on there and give you a Lou Thesz, Ric Flair style match. So why do you want to see him in a normal wrestling match to begin with?
This is another match I put my own money on as well. So let's see if I'm right or wrong with this. But definitely The Fiend is my pick. I think it'll be a fun match. We do need to see Alexa Bliss in some capacity in this match. But for me, I think The Fiend's got more to lose, as you said. I think Randy Orton can afford a loss here. So have you got anything else you want to add before we go into the next match?
Now let's talk about the next match.
Okay, so we've got the New Day facing the Hurt Business, and that's obviously for the Raw Tag Team Champions. When we look at this match, obviously the New Day, they've had the belt obviously for a while now. They won it previously back in November, and they've just been kind of on a tear. This team have faced each other quite a lot. When we look at it, Kofi Kingston's beat Shelton Benjamin back into start of December. They obviously had this match twice. The two times they met once in November. And they met twice actually in November. It's 1-1 basically in that feud to a certain point. These teams have obviously faced each other a few times. I think in ring this is going to be a very good match. When we look at kind of the Hurt Business, they've been fairly steady. They won the 6-man tag obviously this week on Raw. Cedric Alexander did what Shelton couldn't. He got the win. He's also beat Xavier as well. For me, I think this is going to be fun. I want to see the Hurt Business get the win here. I would love to see that. Back of my mind thinks that Hurt Business can't get the job done, which is kind of a worry. But if I was going to predict for this, because we're not getting any other title changes potentially, I'm going to go for new tag team champions here. I'm going to say the Hurt Business get the win here, and I think this could be great for them. What's your prediction and thoughts of the feud?
Yep, just like what I was saying about Bray Wyatt or The Fiend, I think that we've seen them challenge for the titles before, and at this point, the Hurt Business can't afford to lose again because it delegitimizes them so much. I think that's the perfect amount of spice to add to the Raw Tag Team division too, is some new champions, some heel champions. And the thing with the New Day is sort of the same thing with Randy Orton. They're at a point in their careers and their legacies where they can afford to lose like this, and they don't lose their credibility as much.
We've had this match kind of 3 times now on the trot, like sort of in quick succession. Are you a fan of them keep doing these rematches, or do you think because these wrestlers are so talented, it doesn't matter?
I think there's that. I mean, yeah, there's some great athletes. I mean, Cedric Alexander is one of the best athletes in the company. Shelton Benjamin can go. I mean, Kofi and Xavier are also quite good. Xavier, I pointed out before, is extremely underrated as an in-ring wrestler. So there's that. And I don't mind doing the same match as long as you're moving in a different direction with each match. And so, for example, yeah, I think this is like the 4th time we've seen them face each other in tag action. If you're going to do it this time to where the Hurt Business win the tag team titles, that is something new. That's something different.
Definitely. Have you got anything else you want to add before we go into the last official match?
Let's keep it moving.
Okay, so the last official match, we have got some others which we can discuss potentially, but the last one we know is official is the Raw Women's Tag Team titles. We've got champions Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler facing Asuka and a mystery partner. For me, obviously we discussed at great length during the Raw the fact that Lana's not in this spot. And I think the big thing is about who the partner is. For me, it's one of 3 people. We can clearly say that if they want to be the wow factor, they're going to bring Charlotte Flair back. I think that kind of would be fun. For me, I don't see that happening. I think we're more likely going to get Dana Brooke or Mandy Rose based on Raw talk as well. Clearly, there was a lot of hints there. And I think if we do get Asuka and Mandy Rose, or Asuka and Dana, I think we're going to get the tag team champions retain. And I really hope that this is done one and done, and then we can get Asuka back on a singles feud. What's your thoughts on any prediction of the partner?
So, I mean, Charlotte would be a shock factor, but I kind of wonder if they want to bring her back and immediately put her in a tag match. I think actually what they might do, I think this makes more sense for an angle. If you have it be Mandy Rose or Dana Brooke, probably Mandy Rose since she just came back, and they actually do win the titles off Nia and Shayna. So then what happens is you have Lana come back. You've got Dana Brooke in the picture too. And it's like, which team are the champions? Because it's like, oh, well, so Asuka and Lana can be like, oh, well, Mandy stepped in Lana's place. So she was just winning the title for our team. But Mandy's like, no, I'm one half of the tag champions. I won this for Dana and me. It would make for an interesting angle. I mean, I don't know how long Lana's going to be gone. That's the thing. If it could be as simple as, you know, Mandy and Asuka win, and Asuka gives the title to Dana Brooke because she wants to focus on the singles stuff. I do think bringing back Charlotte in a singles role, probably as the challenger for Asuka's title, is the better way to bring her back.
The only way I'd be a fan of Charlotte coming back in this capacity at all is if she does come back with Asuka, they win the belts, and then immediately Charlotte turns on her, or Charlotte basically costs Asuka the match. I think that's the only thing I'd be a fan of. Would you be a fan of Charlotte coming back at sort of TLC and then ultimately costing the match and walking out on Asuka, starting that singles feud?
Yeah, that could work. I mean, just like her daddy, I much prefer Charlotte as a heel.
Yeah, she's much more comfortable as a heel, I think, as well.
Yeah, just like her dad.
Have you got any other thoughts before we go into the other rumor matches for TLC that are expected to be announced potentially?
I feel like it all kind of blends together. So I think it's not too hard to transition right into this stuff because TLC is the last nail in the hammer or whatever you call it for WWE in 2020. So I think everything else going on right now, TLC is completely related to that.
Definitely. So let's go into it. So we've got the potential SmackDown Tag Team Championships of the Street Profits facing Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. Clearly, this has obviously been building for a few weeks, and it's obviously not officially been announced. Clearly, they've had this match before. On back in November, we got Ziggler and Roode get this pinfall over them. We've also got sort of these team been feuding for a while. For me, I think it could be a fun match. I think obviously the Street Profits have started losing matches. Their last kind of match was in November. And when we look at kind of Roode and Ziggler have been pretty strong. Ziggler even got a pinfall over Montez Ford in a singles match back in December. So for me, I think it'll be fun. But your tag team champions are going to retain their Street Profits are not losing the belt here. Any thoughts and prediction if this match happens?
Yeah, Street Profits aren't at the level of career that New Day's at, so they need to keep it. I mean, if they lose it, it hurts them.
Perfect. We then go into the next match. We've then got the United States Championship. Bobby Lashley facing Riddle. Clearly, Lashley's attacked Riddle, and it's continually sort of been going on weeks and weeks now. Clearly, they've built Riddle up by beating MVP. He beat Sheamus as well, which was a massive win when you think about it. He's also been on a really good run. Clearly, obviously, he's going to go against a Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley obviously hasn't lost a singles match since he lost to Drew back at sort of earlier in the year, really, if that makes sense, which was back at Backlash. And I think for this is only going to be one winner, really. I think Lashley to win here. I think it'll be a quick match, unfortunately. Any prediction?
Yeah, if they do the match, I mean, I've already laid out my entire way that I would book this Matt Riddle heel turn. You have Riddle not take himself seriously enough, and Lashley fully takes advantage of it.
Definitely. Have you got anything else to add before we go to the last match, probably on the card?
What do we got?
We've got Daniel Bryan and Jey Uso potentially. Obviously, they've been building this for a while. Clearly, Uso, as under the direction of Reigns, has been beating down people continually. For me, I think this will be a fun match. Clearly, they want to get to a Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns feud. I'm getting the feel for Royal Rumble maybe, or maybe even further down the line. When we look at kind of Daniel Bryan, obviously, he's been pretty steady, really. He beat Jey Uso already. Uso beat him, so they're tied 1-1. Obviously, Daniel Bryan's obviously got pinfall victories over Sheamus this year as well. And clearly, in this past week's SmackDown, he got a big 6-man tag win with Big E and Rey Mysterio. And when we look at kind of his opponent as well, I think Uso really has obviously been fairly steady. He's obviously beat kind of people such as AJ Styles before and stuff like that. He's also beat Daniel Bryan. I think this is a big match for me. If I'm picking a winner, Daniel Bryan's got to get the win here. I think if they're going to go for Daniel Bryan Roman, Daniel Bryan needs to get the win here. What's your prediction and thoughts if it happens?
Yeah, and really, as bad as it might sound, Jey Uso's at a point now to where beating him doesn't even really hurt him that much because he's pretty much Roman Reigns' whipping boy anyway. I think that will change when Jimmy comes back. Because, I mean, yeah, that's the thing about a tag team guy is he can be a total joke in a singles capacity, but then you put him in a tag team that's very famous, and he instantly regains all of his credibility. Daniel Bryan, I mean, I do think I've made references to this about Randy Orton, about the New Day. I think there's a mentality toward Daniel Bryan backstage that, we've already seen the Yes movement. We've already seen that WrestleMania moment to where Daniel Bryan's at a level of star to where he doesn't need a world title run again. But I personally would still enjoy seeing it. I think that there's still money left in Daniel Bryan. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do if they do put him in the main event Universal title picture. So, yeah, if they do this match, he'll get the win.
I think credit to WWE. They've done a great job since Uso came back in September to build him up to kind of this intrigue. Looking forward to seeing it. Have you got anything else you want to add about the TLC card before we hit that final news story tonight?
I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Let's get onto this then. So obviously, this past week's Raw, unfortunately, has been rated as kind of record low rating. Apparently, it set a record for generating the lowest rating and viewership in the history, apparently. And apparently, backstage heads are kind of rolling at the moment. I think there's massive sort of discussions about recognition decisions to be made for the show after. What's your thoughts on kind of this rating? Are you surprised? And how do you think they're going to be able to fix this, if at all?
I'm surprised because I kind of wonder if it's coincidental or not. I mean, the reason I say that is because we've seen worse Raws than the one that we saw on Monday. And those worst Raws still had higher ratings. I don't really follow that much of regular pop culture to where I don't know if there was something going on Monday night that drew viewers away. I can't think of it. I mean, I can tell you one thing. It definitely wasn't the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns playing football.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it could have been. But a lot of times when you have your record low rating, you don't even look for the reason. You just say, oh, shit, we've had our record low rating. And, the last time something like this happened, the responses were, we're going to revolutionize Raw by doing Raw Underground and Retribution. I can only hope that their contingency plan this time is better. Yeah, it wasn't a bad Raw, and I don't think it deserved to be the lowest rated one in history. I just can't figure out what it is that drew viewers away and didn't give them an incentive to tune in.
I think for me, if I'm looking at it personally, compare Raw to NXT. I know they're two different entities. Like Raw's obviously 3 hours, NXT's 2 hours. What they're doing on NXT that's far better is they are creating that sort of cliffhanger TV, almost Vince Russo style TV, where you're getting the whole thing with Xia Li and Boa going on. You've got a reason to watch every week. You've also got Karrion Kross coming back. WWE don't at the moment plant enough seeds. I think every week it's very samey. And I think the problem is when you've got these holes in storylines, like when you've had the build of Retribution be fouled, you've had Raw Underground go with no explanation, you've just got the same match after match. Nobody has got really any personality, really. The problem with WWE, I would say at the moment, is they're solely building Lashley, McIntyre and Roman, and that's it. That's the only people they're behind every single week. They're not really invested in the mid-card. And I think the problem is when you are dropping people like Keith Lee, it's a real struggle. What's interesting as well this week is what's broke. Clearly, there was a group of writers that were asked to make a list of who they feel is underutilized on the roster. The list actually generally had the same people on every time, and the main people that were on it was Cesaro, Angel Garza, Chad Gable, Carmella, and Peyton Royce. What were your thoughts on that list?
Yeah, so I don't know when that list was actually made. It is possible that list was made before we just saw Carmella come back, because I find it weird that she would be on there given that she's having 2 SmackDown Women's title matches. Everyone else on that list, I completely agree with. I was actually watching SmackDown and I saw Cesaro and Nakamura, and I started thinking, man, like, it's crazy how Cesaro's never been able to hit his full potential. How, back in, I think it was 2014 when he won the Andre Battle Royal, when they put him with Heyman, he was the king of swing and stuff. It looked like he was finally going to get it. But there's been rumors for years that Vince doesn't think he's viable as a champion because he's Swiss. That's supposedly the reason. Which, by the way, is not legitimate, because anybody who knows the tennis world, I got 3 words for you: Roger fucking Federer. People will gladly accept a Swiss guy. But I don't know. I mean, Cesaro, think about him in AEW. Think about Claudio Castagnoli in AEW. Who are some other people on that list? Most of them made complete sense to me.
Gable.
Yes. Oh, by far.
Peyton Royce.
This is, yeah. I'm very biased toward Peyton Royce.
Angel Garza. And you got a few. The thing with me is, as you said, last time they were in this hole, it was panic stations. They were on Twitter saying this stable's coming, they're doing all this stuff, it's all underground. For me, where do they go next? The only way I think you're going to go, you're either going to get a big return from Goldberg. WWE, for me, haven't got it in them to do an angle like sort of with 2 or 3 days build that's going to get people in and captivated for WrestleMania. The trouble with this is the timing of the year as well. We are going into Rumble season. It should all be lined up now. Rumble up to WrestleMania, everything should be lined up. So for me, if I was booking this, the only way I think they can get out of this, I don't know if it will make any difference, is I think NXT needs a lift in the battle of AEW. And I think if you had an NXT invasion on Raw or some sort of outside interference or some outside reason to watch, I think this can really work. I think you've really got to start basically building people up. And I think you've got to have these storylines rather than have people go hide and seeking for an hour and a half just because your main star's away. It's just really, really amateurish in my opinion. I know in the Attitude Era we did have parts where it wasn't great TV every single week, but when they did do stuff, there was a reason to watch and you went home feeling like your 2 hours you spent was worthwhile. Have you got anything else you want to kind of add before we end the show?
Well, before we went on the air, we were talking about how that's one thing that made the Attitude Era so good, is it wasn't all about Stone Cold and The Rock. The mid-card guys were so over. I mean, like, I remember I turned on an episode of Raw when I was in the UK. I was watching it with Lewis, and the New Age Outlaws come out, and Road Dogg, like, everybody loves the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. Val Venus was so over. And so that is one thing that Raw, and I guess WWE to an extent, the whole company is missing. It's something that AEW does fairly well, actually. And yeah, WWE Raw in particular could very much do with developing their mid-card to where it's not all about Drew McIntyre. It's not all about AJ Styles or Bobby Lashley. It's, 10 other guys are also quite over.
Yeah, I think clearly, obviously, it's interesting times. I think Imran, from an Imran perspective, the product now is probably better than the Attitude Era, but the storylines and I think the general angle week by week is what let it down, really, in my opinion. I think you're generally being asked to invest a lot of time for the show, and when they're doing stuff that doesn't follow up and you do get invested in storylines and they don't pay it off, I think it's really frustrating. But I think going forward, I think heads are going to roll. If there's going to be a casualty of this, do we see people getting fired maybe? I know that Vince likes to blame somebody. I wouldn't want to be in that sort of next number 2 spot to a certain point.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. I think Vince takes like all of his frustration that's in his head and he needs an outlet for it. And whoever is around, he directs that entire lightning bolt toward that person, whether they were actually responsible for it or not. I will say one thing, and this is not, for the industry as a whole. Oh, shoot, sorry.
That's all right.
Wait, all right, hold on.
Invisible Man impression, but
I know, right?
There we go. Now. There you go, mate.
There we go. So for the industry as a whole, the pandemic has not been good. I know quite a few friends of mine who flat out said they will not watch wrestling without an actual crowd, and a Thunderdome doesn't count. I think it could be one reason why AEW does better. I'm not taking anything away from how AEW, their roster or how they book angles, but I do think that for some people who don't like wrestling in an empty building, AEW is much more watchable because of the wrestlers at ringside and the fans who are there at Daly's place. You get chants, you get real boos, real cheers. And my friend Troy is a great example. He flat out cannot watch any WWE right now because watching wrestling with no crowd is like the planet Earth existing without the sun.
I think for me, when I'm looking at what I would love to see more from WWE, the main roster, one of the last things I was going to say is I really love it when you're questioning whether was that meant to happen, was that real to a certain point. I think that mystique, a lot of it's gone in that respect. I think I really loved it with Retribution when you first come and you're questioning who's that, why they ripping up the arena. It's stuff you've never seen before. Whereas I think every week when it's the same matches, as you said earlier in the show, we had Raw with the same finish 3 times. It's how much can you see the same thing every time, really. But as I said, we'll see what happens on this week's Raw. Expect a big shock. I think they'll come out with something a bit different. I'm not saying it'll be good, but I think it's a Christmas episode, so maybe they'll wait until the new year potentially. I'm thinking about that.
I don't know. I think if you want to do a reset, TLC is a great opportunity to hit the reset button. It's just all about how you do it. I think out of anything that wasn't originally planned, if they suddenly panic and change plans on it, it will be the WWE title picture and who the WWE champion is. You're talking about Vince finding someone to blame. It's possible Vince just suddenly decides, oh, it's Drew McIntyre not drawing as the WWE champion. And so AJ Styles or The Miz could be an attempt to just, scramble and find someone in that place besides McIntyre.
I think we're going to get a rematch on Raw of Styles and McIntyre again to get a rating. That's what I get. I get the feeling they'll do that again. They'll do rematches again. That's the trouble with it. This is what the trouble I have. In the old days, you do a 4-week feud most of the time, and then the next pay-per-view after Raw, next Raw after the pay-per-view, it's something new. You're starting the next challenge. But as I said, that's another subject. Do you want to say anything else before we wrap it up tonight? I appreciate you coming on again. It's been a fun discussion.
I'm looking forward to TLC because it will tell us a lot of what WWE's planning to do with 2021. That's sort of what I was trying to say earlier. It's the last pay-per-view of the year, and you can sort of look at it as a way to tie up everything that's happened in 2020. But I also think, who your WWE champion is going to be, who your Universal champion is going to be, you're setting the pace for the road to WrestleMania with this pay-per-view. It is a much bigger deal. I've said in the past that December's kind of a lull for WWE and TLC can kind of be a throwaway pay-per-view. I don't think it should be that way. It should be the exact opposite.
Definitely. I think clearly we're going to go into Royal Rumble season next month, so that's going to be fun. I'm going to, obviously, next week we'll cover Raw. Again, if you're up for that next Wednesday, we'll get Raw done and we'll also get your thoughts on TLC. Is that okay?
I should be able to do it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I might be
cool.
doing it on the road in the car, but I will still do it.
That's
I
all right.
won't be driving. I won't be
That's all right.
driving. No,
That's all right.
I should still be able to do it. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Appreciate you coming on again. This has been Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Thank you for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up. Please give it a share and a like. Please subscribe. We need some subscribers. And if you could click the bell, you'll get all notifications, all the other videos. I've been George Jones, joined by Josh Hayes, and I hope you have a good evening. Thank you for watching. Thank you
We
for
will
your...
Wait, I was gonna say we
Yeah.
will TLC you later.
Yeah, enjoy the TLC show, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.